Today we'll be talking about our part 2 concerning the history of Taft's Mill, and this will be bringing us up to present times of what it's like with Tim and Joan Sen. And one of the first pictures we'll look at is when the building was in the process of being remodeled but was not all finished yet. And then we'll be kind of looking at some of the other different shots here in a few moments, but that's the way things looked at first there. And we'll be borrowing from an article written by Dave Patterson, and he's in back in the 70s there, and this article here was written in June of 1976. So this is what I'll be referring to here in talking about Tim and Joan and how things progressed with the building. And as we go along, and I'll kind of stop for a moment or two and mention that we'll look at a few of the different scenes or angles of the building and how it looked. And also I'll be mentioning about one where we'll be looking, kind of zooming in more on where you can see the Taft's Mill Pottery sign. It's not very large, but Dawn will be zooming on that when I get to that point. Okay, this again, we have to remember this is written in 1976, so keep that in mind. And Tim and Joan, of course, first came along here in 1974, and that's when Tim especially kind of fell in love with the old mill. And we always have to keep in mind, thank goodness they came when they did. Condition of the mill wasn't the best. We saw in an earlier version in part 1 about how things looked, and windows were kind of boarded up and everything. And pigeons were living there and everything else for a while. So it was quite a chore, a lot of work that had to be done. So I'll mention just a little bit here from the article here before we look at some more pictures. This refers to Dave Patterson talking, and this is back in 1976 there in June. One morning last week, this reporter went down to Taft's Mill to see just what was going on and found a first floor adorned with various stoneware items and a young man repairing the upper level of the building. The man turned out to be Tim Sen, and he makes the stoneware to sell. Now, I know it would be nice if we had a lot of that to see, but I think that would make a good future program, so we won't worry so much about that. But it's the stoneware, the things that he made that we all remember, and he's done things for different anniversaries, you name it, special occasions, he comes up with something that can be looked at. Tim, along with his wife Joan, purchased the mill a year and a half ago, and that would have been in 1974. They were looking for some type of older building in Grant County area that they could fix up so Tim could make his stoneware. The old mill fit their purpose, and so they bought it. Now, a little bit about Tim and Joan back here in 76. The Sens are both 27 years old, and Tim was a graduate of UW-Platteville with majors in English and art. They lived in Platteville, where Joan worked while Tim commuted to Bloomington on weekdays to work on the mill and to make stoneware. Tim has been doing structural work on the building for the last year and a half, but says there is still much to be done. Now, we'll look at a few of the other scenes here of the building, some different angles, and Dawn will try to zoom in on one here where we can see the little Taft's Mill Pottery sign. and some of the different angles from different approaches of how the building looked. I might just add as a sidelight here, because you won't see this at all, but I can remember at least 2 different times when there were roofers up on the top of the building putting a new roof on, and I think at least that's been done twice since Tim and Joan have been here. It's just like anything else with the house, any kind of a building, there's always some work to do. It's never ever always completely done. But there was a time here in more recent times when we got to take a little tour of the 3 levels, and it's amazing what all was done inside the building. The Sens named the place Taft's Mill, and of course we looked at the sign, because a man named Taft built the mill back in 1852. The mill was the 2nd building constructed in Bloomington, according to Tim. The first was a boarding house built for the men who constructed the mill. Bloomington was originally named Tafton after the mill's owner. Tim told of how Taft used the mill to grind flour, but after a time experienced financial problems and went broke. Residents of Tafton held Taft in disgrace, according to Tim, and thus had the town's name changed to Bloomington. Now, we won't go into all detail on that, but there was quite an article and things and voting and so on, different times, and changes were made. And of course the history of the mill, a lot of that was covered in the first one that we did, and so a lot of changes always took place. Now, one thing that we might look at in more detail comes here near our end of our line of pictures, where we see the staircase and also how it looked in the older building. And of course the modern one now is just so beautiful. There's a little tree that leaves out there in season, and that's by the going up there to the living quarters. And so that's very nice. But there were in some of the old pictures at different spots, maybe an old stair that was going up to the building. Now, what I'd like to just say a little bit here about the pottery. The pottery Tim makes is a type called stoneware, which is very hard as compared to the earthen software. Stoneware is harder because it is baked to a very high temperature, about 2300 degrees, according to Tim. Tim related how he makes his stoneware. First he takes clay and shapes it on the pottery wheel. Then he fires it in the kiln, which accounts for the smoke which rises sometimes from behind Taft's mill. Next he dips the pottery in a particular glaze, depending upon what color he wants the pottery to be, and then fires or bakes the pottery for a second time. When it cools, he has a finished piece of stoneware. Tim says stoneware can be glazed to achieve colors which include dark reds and several shades of blue and green. Now I'd like to kind of say a few words here about what Tim and Joan were doing in their years here in Bloomington, living here. And we need to remember that the mill building would be long gone if it wasn't for Tim and Joan, because the condition of it, probably today it may have only been a parking lot, but thanks to Tim and Joan we still have it, and so we have a building that is 169 years old. True, it's been remodeled and different things, but the basic building 169 years. Now, Tim, for a long time, until very recent times here, was a member of the West Grant Rescue Squad. And I remember, if you were around at the right time, and the siren went off, and you could see Tim making a dash up the hill from the mill to where the rescue squad building was. And so he's a very, very long time member there of the rescue squad there, and we'll always remember all the efforts that he made helping the rescue squad. Also, Tim and Joan, they used to go to a lot of shows. They still go to some shows, but not as many as they used to. But still, there are different times of the year, especially coming around Christmas time and that there would be sort of an open house available. And there are a lot of times where people could make a schedule to do a particular visit if it was that they wanted. But Tim has done so many different things. And like I say, sometime in the future, maybe we'll try to show some of those different things. Now, Joan, of course, many years also worked at the vocational school in Fenimore. And so she was used to working with finances in different ways and working with different people. And so I'm very much aware of what everyone has to face with different things. And in the most recent time here, of course, since she's retired from the vocational school, that she has been for a number of years the head of the Bloomington Library Board, and will still be as a member of the library board, because she will always have good experiences to draw upon for other people that are on the library board. And we're hoping with the people that we have there that another thing that we can keep going for a long time will be the public library. And the public library here in Bloomington began in 1908. So it's getting to have a nice long type history too. Not nearly as long as the mill, but very important to the village. And sometime here in the future we'll be talking about another one of the old buildings in the village. So this kind of concludes what we would like to say today. It's not everything by any means there, but again, we can't stress how important Tim and Joan were to the village there in helping to save our oldest landmark.